Welcome to History with Kids. Today we're diving into the story of Beowulf with quotes from the Francis B. Gumer translation. While not entirely history, it's close enough for this podcast. We should alert you, this episode includes fairly gory violence. We're not trying to scare anyone, but this may not be for sensitive listeners. Now, kids, what do you know about Scandinavia? Modern-day Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, that area.
Nothing. I don't know much.
Do you know where it is in the world?
Yeah, it's near Russia.
That's a good point, Scoops. It is near Russia. It's in Northern Europe where it gets very cold in the long winter. And this story was written down about 1,000 years ago. So it's older than the secret history of the Mongols, about halfway between us and Julius Caesar. It was written in Old English as a poem. The entire thing rhymes, and we don't know who wrote it. So it's been translated, and here's how it begins. Listen, we have heard of the glory in bygone days of the folk kings of the Spear Danes, how those noble lords did lofty deeds. What do you think of that opening?
I think it's very good.
The main story begins with some Danes hanging out in their big hall. But then this happens. Here's a quote. A bold demon who waited in darkness wretchedly suffered all the while, a fiend from hell. The grim spirit was called Grendel. What do you think about Grendel?
I think he doesn't sound like the nicest person on earth.
Noodle?
I think that he will be a good leader.
Grendel would?
Well, he'll be a strong leader.
That's true. Grendel would be very strong. Although he is a fiend from hell. So do you think that he's like a nice person to hang out with?
No.
That's true. The story of Grendel continues. When night descended, he went to seek out the high house to see how the ring Danes had bedded down after their beer drinking. He found therein a troop of nobles asleep after the feast. They knew no sorrow or human misery. The unholy creature, the Grendel, grim and ravenous, was ready at once, ruthless and cruel, and took from their rest 30 thanes. That means he ate 30 thanes. Thence he went, sort of like a knight, I guess is one way to think about it. What do you think that means?
I think that means Grendel is evil. Me too.
You're right. It continues this way somehow, remarkably, for 12 long winters. It says, the great ravager relentlessly stalked. A dark death shadow lurked and struck old and young alike. In perpetual night held the misty moors. So 12 years of that. This is a pretty bad situation, right?
Yeah.
Enter our hero, Beowulf. Beowulf feels bad about what's happening, and he wants to do something. So here's what he does. He commanded to be made a good wave crosser, said he would seek out that war king over the swans riding. Can you guys figure out what that means?
He asked to be able to go to defeat Grendel.
And what is he going to use to go there?
A ship?
Yes, correct. A wave crosser is a ship, and it's going to cross the swans riding, which is like a ocean current, I guess. So Beowulf sails to the Danish area where all this is happening with Grendel, and Beowulf is stopped by a border guard who is asked what's going on here. And it says that Beowulf, quote, unlocked his word hoard and explains who he is and why he's there to help. Kids, do you guys have word hoards?
No, I don't even know what they are.
Well, you kind of do have word hoards. It's like your collection of words that you can use to explain what's going on in a tricky situation. So Beowulf uses his word hoard. The border guard says, a sharp shield warrior must be a judge of both things, word and deed. Is that true?
Yes.
Do you know what that means?
No.
In other words, he's saying, I have to judge what you say and what you do. And then he says, and I believe you. I believe your words, and your deeds seem good so far. You've come here to help, I think. So you can go. So Beowulf arrives at Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, who Grendel is attacking. Hrothgar is glad Beowulf is here to help, especially because Beowulf has, quote, 30 men's strength, strong in battle, in his hand grip. That means when he grips you with his hand, it's like you're being gripped by 30 men. That's how strong his hand grip is. Beowulf replies, Be well, Hrothgar. This business with Grendel was made known to me on my native soil. Seafarers say that this building stands, most excellent of halls, idle and useless to every man, after every evening's light is hidden under heaven's gleaming dome. Then my own people advised me, the best warriors and the wisest men, that I should, Lord Hrothgar, seek you out, because they knew the might of my strength. They themselves had seen me bloodstained from battle, come from the fight when I captured 5. But I slew a tribe of giants, then on the salt waves fought sea monsters by night, survived that tight spot, avenged the wetter's affliction, they asked for trouble, and crushed those grim foes. And now with Grendel, that monstrous beast, I shall by myself have a word or two with that giant. So what do you think of Beowulf's speech?
I think that's pretty powerful.
Noodle?
He's just using his words. He isn't using his emotions.
That's a good point. And he's not using his deeds, his actions, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant by emotions.
That's true. He's talking a big talk. We'll see if he can back it up with his actions. Beowulf adds this. I have also heard that this evil beast in his wilderness does not care for weapons. So too will I scorn to bear a sword or a broad shield, a yellow battle board. But with my grip I shall grapple with the fiend and fight for life, foe against foe. In other words, Beowulf is saying, I heard that Grendel doesn't use weapons, so I'm not going to use weapons either. What do you guys think of that?
I think he is going to use weapons. I think it's a bad idea.
We shall see. Well, Hrothgar, the king of this area, responds, and he makes a point of talking about his history with Beowulf's dad, and how Hrothgar had once helped Beowulf's dad when the dad was in a tricky situation. If you're Hrothgar, why would you do that? You have your people there in the hall with you. This fancy warrior Beowulf has showed up. He's talking a big game about how he's going to defeat Grendel. And one of the first things you say is, oh yeah, I did a favor for your dad a while ago. Why would that be? What is he trying to say to his own people?
You should volunteer too.
Something more simple. I have dignity. Even though this other outsider has to come and help us, because for 12 years we haven't been able to defeat Grendel at all, it's not like I need the help and I couldn't do it on my own. It's like he's just returning a favor that I did for his dad. Because if there wasn't that debt with Beowulf's dad, Hrothgar would look very weak. And in this world, in Scandinavia 1,000 years ago, if you're a king, do you want to look weak?
No.
No. So here's what happened next. There was the laughter of warriors, lovely sounds, and winsome words. Wealhtheow went forth, Hrothgar's queen, mindful of customs, adorned with gold. She greeted the men in the hall. Then that courteous wife offered the full cup. First to the guardian of the East Danes' kingdom, bid him be merry at his beer drinking. And everyone drinks together and promises to be on a team together, essentially. And Beowulf and his warriors go to sleep in the great hall. What do you think happens next?
Grendel comes.
Correct. Here it is. In the dark he came, creeping, the shadow goer. The door burst open, fast in its forged bands when his fingers touched it. Bloody-minded, swollen with rage, he swung open the hall's mouth, and immediately afterwards the fiend strode across the paved floor, when angrily in his eyes stood a light not fair, glowing like fire. And then Grendel eats one of the soldiers there, which is kind of gross.
How?
It's kind of disgusting. But Grendel has like massive claws, and he can just like basically rip someone open and just pop them in his enormous mouth. Remember, Grendel's like a giant. He's huge.
He's a demon.
He's a demon giant, yes.
What's a demon?
A demon is like the opposite of an angel, like a superpowered creature from hell. Then the book says, but it was not Grendel's fate to taste any more of the race of mankind after that night. That means that this is the last night Grendel's going to ever eat a person. Grendel moves through the dark hall and comes up to Beowulf. Grendel bends down, reaches towards Beowulf, and grabs him. But what's Beowulf's secret power here that we heard earlier?
Beowulf has a very good grip.
Correct.
Mhm.
It's the strength of his arm. Yeah. As soon as that shepherd of sins, that means Grendel, discovered that he had never met on Middle Earth in any region of the world another man with a greater hand grip, in his heart, Grendel, he was afraid for his life, but none the sooner could he flee. His mind was eager to escape to the darkness. but Beowulf has him by the hand. And so they start fighting. And it says, the great hall resounded to the Danes, it seemed, the city's inhabitants, and every brave earl, like a wild ale sharing, like a party. Both were angry, fierce house wardens. The hall echoed. It was a great wonder that the wine hall withstood their fighting and didn't fall to the ground, that fair building, but it was fastened inside and out with iron bands forged with skill. From the floor there flew many a mead bench, as men have told me, gold adorned, where those grim foes fought. What do you think of this battle?
Good. Wait, is this true?
It's not totally true, but it depicts a world that was a real world. So there were heroes, there were kings, there were earls. There was no demon monster like Grendel, as far as we know. But this kind of fighting did happen in these kind of places.
Like
Not-
where?
In Scandinavia, in Denmark, 1,000 years.
And was there actually a Beowulf that existed?
Maybe. Yeah, we don't know the full story, but there may.
People actually had a very good grip.
It's very believable. Do you think this would make a good movie, by the way?
Yeah.
I do too. Now, you might be wondering about Beowulf's friends, all the people he has with him, what they're doing. Well, are you wondering that?
Yeah.
Here's what they do. Many an earl in Beowulf's troop drew his old blade, longed to protect the life of his liege lord Beowulf, but they did not know that no sword, not the best iron anywhere in the world, could even touch that evil sinner Grendel, for he had worked a curse on all weapons. So, did it hurt Beowulf or help Beowulf that he had decided to fight Grendel with his hands alone?
It helped.
And there's another lesson here, which is Beowulf did a different strategy for fighting Grendel than everyone else who's fought Grendel. Everyone else who's fought Grendel has used swords, but Beowulf didn't use a sword. And that by trying something different, he actually had a higher chance of succeeding.
And did he succeed?
So here's what happens next. I should warn you, it's a little gory. Beowulf rips off Grendel's entire arm from the rest of Grendel's body. And it says, Grendel was forced to flee, fatally wounded. That means he's going to die. And Beowulf displays Grendel's arm in the hall. And it says, then in the morning was many a warrior, as I have heard, round that gift hall. Leaders of the folk came from far and near throughout the wide land to see that wonder. Like these are tourists. They're here to see Grendel's arm. Would you want to come and see Grendel's arm if you live nearby?
No. Yeah, still no.
Why no? Why yes?
Yes, because it might look cool, and I also might want to see it. But my question is, who would want to see bloody corpses of an evil demon who's trying to kill everybody?
Well, better than seeing the living evil demon. Well, Hrothgar gives Beowulf a bunch of fancy stuff. A fancy sword, armor, horses, gems, etc. And all the soldiers who were still alive got gold and stuff too. Now it says, noise and music mingled together before the leader of the Halfdeen's forces, Beowulf. They're having a...
Party.
Correct!
Party.
They're having a party. Do you think it's all over now? Are we done with Beowulf?
No, doubt it.
Correct. After a day of partying, everyone's tired. It says, they sank into sleep. One paid sorely for his evening rest. It was soon all too clear, obvious to all men, that an avenger still lived on after that enemy for a long time after that grim battle. Grendel's mother, monstrous woman, remembered her misery. She who dwelt in those dreadful waters, the cold streams, still wanted to go on her sad journey to avenge her son's death. What's going on?
Her mother is going to avenge her son. Beowulf killed my son. I'm really angry about that because I love my son very much and he was very strong and powerful. Now I want to kill Beowulf.
Yeah, that's right. So it's sort of interesting how different perspectives make the same story look very different. From Beowulf's perspective, here's how the story goes next. Grendel's mom reaches the hall. Then in the hall was the hard edge drawn, swords over seats, many a broad shield raised in hands. None remembered his helmet or broad mail shirt when that terror seized him.
Is Grendel's mom so immune to swords and metal things?
We'll see. We'll find out. Anyway, she takes the soldier and drags him away. Beowulf had been sleeping in another building that night as a guest of Hrothgar the king. So in the morning, everyone is sad, and Beowulf is quickly fetched as a man who is, and here's the line, victory blessed. Because Beowulf defeated Grendel. So people are like, who can defeat Grendel's mom? The guy who is blessed by victory against Grendel could maybe also defeat Grendel's mom. Does that make sense?
Does Beowulf die by defeating Grendel's mom?
We'll have to find out. Reports from the countryside say that Grendel's mom lives fairly close, but it's a wild area that Beowulf will have to navigate. Here's what it says. That murky land they hold, wolf-haunted slopes, windy headlands, awful fen paths where the upland torrents plunge downward under the dark crags, the flood underground. Every night one can see there an awesome wonder, fire on the water. Hrothgar says he needs Beowulf's help, and here's a quote. I will reward you with ancient riches for that feud, as I did before, with twisted gold if you return alive. So, kids, what would you do?
I'll go fight for my life and for everyone's life. Me too.
That's very brave of you. Beowulf says, yep, I'll do it. And he also says he will gain fame in the quest. He'll be more famous by succeeding against Grendel's mom. With some of his soldiers, Beowulf follows the path of Grendel's mom into the swamp, and they reach a place where a river meets the sea and Grendel's mom lives underwater. If you were Beowulf, what would you do now?
I might get scuba diving gear.
Scuba diving gear had not been invented yet, but he does put on his armor, and for this one, he wants a sword. He has a special sword that was loaned to him for this battle. Here's what the book says about the sword. Its edge was iron, etched with poison stripes, hardened with the blood of war. It had never failed any man who grasped it in his hands in battle, who dared to undertake a dreadful journey into the very home of the foe. It was not the first time that it had to perform a work of high courage. So that's how the sword is being described. What does that remind you of?
It's almost like magic. I feel like I've heard of a poison sword in another book, but I can't recall what its name is.
I mean, a lot of recent books get ideas from places like Beowulf. But this story that we're talking about now is 1,000 years old. And so many other things that you've come across already in your young lives get their concepts from here and from other things like this from a very long time ago. So Beowulf, with his magic sword, jumps into the sea where Grendel's mother lives. Magically, Beowulf is able to breathe underwater. And there is Grendel's mom. Here's the fight. She snatched at him, seized the warrior in her savage clutches, but none the sooner injured his sound body. The ring mail encircled him, so that she could not pierce that war dress, that locked coat of mail, with her hostile claws. Then that she-wolf of the sea swam to the bottom, and bore the Prince of Rings into her abode, so that he might not, no matter how strong, wield his weapons, but so many wonders set upon him in the water, many a sea beast with battle tusks tearing at his war shirt, monsters pursuing him. The fight is on. Then this happens. Then the worthy man, Beowulf, saw that water witch, Grendel's mom. He gave a mighty blow with his battle sword. He did not temper that stroke, so that the ring-etched blade rang out on her head, a greedy battle song. The guest discovered then that the battle flame would not bite or wound her fatally, but the edge had failed the man in his need. It had endured many hand-to-hand meetings, often sheared through helmets, faded war garments. It was the first time that the fame of that precious treasure, the sword, had failed. So, how's it going so far for Beowulf?
Bad.
Correct. Beowulf has to throw his sword to the side and start fighting Grendel's mom in hand-to-hand combat. Beowulf falls backward. She set upon her hall guest and drew her knife. Broad, bright-edged, she would avenge her boy, her only offspring, Grendel. On his shoulders, Beowulf, lay the linked corslet. It defended his life, prevented the entrance of point and blade. In other words, Grendel's mom is trying to stab Beowulf, but his armor is protecting him. What do you think of the battle descriptions here, by the way, in general?
It sounds quite bloody. Deadly.
And what do you think it means about the society that these stories came out of? Like, what kind of society was it?
There was a lot of fighting in it and death.
Yeah, that's true. It was a violent world in that part of the world at this time. Anyway, Beowulf sees something lucky nearby. He sees a giant sword lying on the ground, and he seized its linked hilt, fierce and ferocious, drew the ring-marked sword, despairing of his life, struck in fury so that it caught her hard in the neck, broke her bone rings. The blade cut through the doomed flesh. She fell to the floor. The sword was bloody. The soldier rejoiced. Beowulf won. Right? He found this giant sword nearby and took a swing, and he defeated Grendel's mom. He looks around and sees Grendel's there, dead on a couch nearby. So Beowulf cuts off Grendel's head with the giant sword. Now, all this has been taking a while. Remember, Beowulf can breathe magically underwater. It's magic. It's ancient magic. But what do you think is happening up on the shore, above the sea?
People are thinking that he's dead.
Correct. It says, the guests sat sick at heart and stared into the mere. They wished but did not hope that they would see their Lord himself. So they've been sitting there and sitting there and sitting there, and they're like, oh, this is looking pretty bad. But then Beowulf emerges. How do you feel if you were sitting there watching?
Very happy. Rejoiced. Proud of Beowulf.
That's a good point. It says, they went forth, followed the trail, rejoicing in their hearts. They marched along the road, the familiar path. Proud as kings, they carried the head from the sea cliff. Scoopy, you said rejoice. Noodle, you said proud. Both of those words are right here. So good job. Hrothgar thanks Beowulf and says, Beowulf, my friend, your glory is exalted throughout the world over every people. You hold it all with patient care and temper strength with wisdom. To you I shall fulfill our friendship, as we have said. And Beowulf goes home and tells his king and his people there everything that happened to him on these adventures. There's one last part to this story. 50 years later.
Does Beowulf survive?
This is 50 years later. So, well, everyone dies eventually. And over the 50 years, Beowulf has become the king of his area. And he's ruled for a long time. And I will warn you, Beowulf is not going to survive this part. But he's had a full life, and things have gone well. And now there's going to be a dragon and a treasure. The treasure is underground. It was placed there by the last survivor of a tribe that had mostly died hundreds of years earlier. Here's the speech from that long ago last survivor using a separate translation that I was given in high school. I can't track down who translated this, but I think it's a really nice speech. This is the last survivor talking to the earth, giving the earth the treasures of the tribe that's almost extinct. Hold them now, earth, now hand of man cannot, a great tribe's treasures. Truly, from you, brave men, first got them. Battle death has taken, murderous fighting, the men, one and all, peers of my people, they have passed from this life. Rest from hall joys. None remains with me to bear the sword, burnish the rich goblet, costly drinking cup. The company has gone elsewhere. Now the hard helmet hammered with gold must be stripped of its plating. The polishers sleep who once made bright those grim battle masks. Also the armor which endured in battle, mid breaking of shields, the bite of swords, rots with the warrior. The ringed corselet may not wander far on the war chief's path. At the soldier's side, the harp is silent. No glad music sounds, nor any good hawk sweeps through the hall, nor swift hoofbeats drum in the courtyard. Death qualm has sent full many a folk forth on their way. What do you think of that?
Violent but moving.
Yeah, that's a good description. I find it very moving, actually. Very sad. The echoes of the tribe no more. Anyway, so that's how a treasure got there. And then a dragon found the treasure, and the dragon's been defending the treasure. And then someone stole from the dragon. Now, stealing treasure from a dragon. Good idea? Bad idea?
Bad.
And what does a dragon do when you steal his treasure?
Try to hunt them down.
And if the dragon doesn't know where you are, what is the dragon going to do?
Fly up.
And then
Kill everyone.
Correct. Yes, that's correct, Scoopy. You got it. The dragon is flying around killing people. It starts attacking Beowulf's kingdom. It says, then that strange visitor, the dragon, began to spew flames and burn the bright courts. His burning gleams struck horror in men. That hostile flyer would leave nothing alive. Now, if you're Beowulf, what do?
I thought you were dead.
No, Beowulf's not dead yet. I had warned you that this story would end with Beowulf dying. But Beowulf is still alive. He's the king of this area.
Protect his people?
Correct. Grim and enraged, the Lord of the Geats took 12 men to seek out the dragon. Beowulf spoke, said boasting words for the very last time. I have survived many battles in my youth. I will yet, an old folk guardian, seek out a feud and do a glorious deed, if only that evildoer will come out to me from his earth hall. Now the dragon shoots fire out of his hall at Beowulf, who's nearby, and Beowulf starts trying to kill the dragon with his sword. What about Beowulf's soldiers, the 12 he took with him? What do you think they'll do?
Attack? Yeah.
Well, they've never seen a dragon before, and they're not quite as super powerful as Beowulf.
Run.
Correct. They're afraid. It says, his comrades, hand-chosen, sons of noblemen, did not take their stand in the troop about him with warlike valor. They fled to the woods and saved their lives. Good or bad?
Bad. Good.
Why?
They probably would have died if they fought. Because if they would have fought, they might have died, but they would have also destroyed the dragon and saved many other people. But because it's only one-on-one, it won't save anyone.
Does that convince you, Noodle?
Yep.
And also, their duty is to help Beowulf. And Beowulf is still trying to fight the dragon. They've abandoned their Lord Beowulf. So is that good or bad?
Bad.
Correct. But one of these 12 guys is named Wiglaf. And here's what it says. Wiglaf saw his liege lord Beowulf suffer heat under his war helmet. He recalled the honors that he, Wiglaf, had received from Beowulf. Wiglaf's courage did not melt, nor did his kinsman's legacy weaken in war. The worm discovered that when they began to meet together. In other words, Wiglaf becomes brave again and goes to help Beowulf. The worm came angrily, the terrible, vicious creature, a second time, scorching with surging flames, seeking out his enemies, the hated men. The hot flames rolled in waves, burned the shield to its rim. The armor was not of any use to the young warrior, but he showed his courage under his kinsman's shield. The young warrior, when his own was charred to cinders. In other words, Wiglaf's shield was burned totally away, and so he's hiding under Beowulf's shield. Still the battle king remembered his glory, and with his mighty strength swung his warblade with savage force. So Beowulf and Wiglaf fight the dragon and attack its belly, which is a smart move for fighting dragons. Remember that, kids. Good note to know. When fighting a dragon, attack its
Belly. But when will we fight the dragon?
You never know. In case you end up fighting one, go for the belly. So Wiglaf and Beowulf, working as a team and going for the dragon's belly, managed to do some good stuff to that dragon. But the dragon manages to bite Beowulf pretty hard on the neck. And Beowulf is starting to lose a lot of blood, and it's not a good situation for Beowulf. Here's what it says. Beowulf spoke. Despite his wound, that deadly cut, he knew clearly that his allotted life had run out, and his joys in the earth, all gone was his portion of days, death immeasurably near. And here's a quote now of Beowulf talking. And the dragon is dying.
Was it also his last quote?
It might be. Now go quickly, he's talking to Wiglaf, to look at the hoard under the hoary stone, dear Wiglaf, now that the worm lies dead, sleeps with his wounds stripped of his treasure. Hurry, so I might witness that ancient wealth, those golden goods, might eagerly gaze on the bright precious gems, and I might more gently for that great wealth give up my life and lordship which I have held so long. What is he saying?
You can have my kingdom.
I mean, there's kind of an implication of that. It's true. Wiglaf will become the king now, actually. But why? What is he asking Wiglaf to do?
Get the treasure so that he can see it.
And why do you think he wants that?
Because he destroyed the dragon. He wants to see the dragon's treasure.
Yeah.
Before he's dead.
Yeah, he wants to feel satisfied and proud and feel like he's completed this mission. That's right. So Wiglaf does as he's been asked, and Beowulf dies. And as Noodle suggested, Wiglaf becomes the next king for being brave. At the very end of the story, Beowulf is remembered. And there's a big ceremony, and everyone comes out, and all kinds of things happen. And the book ends with his people, saying, quote, "They said that he, Beowulf, was of all the kings of the world the mildest of men and the most gentle, the kindest to his folk, and the most eager for fame." What do you think of that?
I think that's a very good honor to have.
Noodle?
I think that it's very good to have that many honors.
And what did you learn in this story?
Be brave.
And what was your favorite part of the story?
How Beowulf sacrificed his life for many others.
What about you, Noodle? What was your favorite part of the story?
When Beowulf defeated Grendel and Grendel's mom.
That's a good part. I like that part too. And I am glad that we live in a home that Grendel or Grendel's mom does not visit. Have a good one.